Okay, great. So I'll just run through the screens, and if you want to just give a quick introduction of yourself and your group, then that would be great. So Sandy, you're top right, top left in my screen here. So we'll do Sandy, then Nigel.
Sandy Heady from Monk and Hadley Common Volunteers in Barnet.
Great, thank you. Nigel?
Yes, I'm representing the Friends of Richmond Park as a member of the Richmond Park Butterfly Group.
Oh, great. Verena?
Hello, I just saw the email and the link, I think in a magazine or something like that. I've never joined anything like it, but I love butterflies, so just trying out.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us today. Simon, then Sue Jones.
I can only see if it's Simon Braidman because I only can't see everyone's names. That's me. I'm from London Borough of Harrow. I'm from Harrow Nature Conservation Forum. I'm also on the executive of the Harrow Parks Forum and site manager of Stanmore Common Local Nature Reserve and effective site manager Stan Marsh, and running lots of wildlife projects across the borough of Harrow.
Thank you, Simon. Sue Jones.
I'm from the Friends of Wandsworth Park. Pat Gross, our chair, shared the link with me, so I just thought I'd, have a look and see what was going on.
Great, thank you. Welcome. Sharon from Ham Lands.
I'm Sharon from Friends of Ham Lands in Richmond.
Thank you. Trisha, then Stephen Bryce, please.
I'm sort of based Wanstead Park, Epping Forest, and lifelong interest in all things natural.
Wonderful. Stephen?
Stephen Bryce, Pink and Way Alliance in Haringey.
Great, thank you. Alana, then Chris Ashby.
Right, I'm Alana. I'm from Friends of Mayo Park in the London Borough of Lewisham, and I'm part of the biodiversity group of the LFGN.
Thank you. Chris?
Good evening, everyone. Chris Ashby from Islington. General interest in natural history, love butterflies. Looking forward to it. Thank you.
Great. Cherry, and then Jane from Friends of Crofton.
Hello, yes, I'm Cherry Trott. I'm a friend and volunteer at Brompton Cemetery, and I have a general interest in wildlife as well.
Great, thank you. Jane?
Hi, I'm Jane Andrews. I'm from the chair of the Friends of Crofton and Sparrow Woods, which is in Bromley, Petswood in Kent, London Borough though. And I walk the butterfly transects and have been doing for 3 or 4 years. That's me.
Great, thank you. Richard, you gave an introduction earlier, but I think others have joined. So do you want to go again, please?
Just very quickly again, we are representing Friends of Wandsworth Common. We are butterfly folk in that we do a transect walk on the common, which we started last year, and very interested in seeing what we can do to improve butterfly counts on the common.
Great, thank you. Katrina, then Peter Newmark.
Katrina, I'm just kind of personal interest, although I am a member of the Friends of Bishop's Park, where I do volunteering, various things.
Great, thank you. Peter?
I'm from Friends of Streatham Common in Lambeth, and I also am a person who does, or rather shares, a butterfly transit.
Great, thank you. Roger, then John Poole.
Yeah, Roger Chapman from Friends of Cherry Tree Wood in East Finchley, and also Barnet Green Spaces Network.
Thank you, Roger. John?
I'm John Poole, Friends of Woodcock Park, Brookway Community Biodiversity Project, CIC, and we're looking to introduce butterflies into our area because we don't seem to have any at the moment.
Oh, great. Well, hopefully this will be helpful then. Claire Tufnell, then Mavis Pilbeam, please.
Hi, this is Claire from Tufnell Park Playing Fields. We're in the borough of Islington, and I think Mavis has got a shared interest.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, hello, I'm Mavis Pilbeam. I live in Islington. And yes, I saw Claire was here. That's great. I'm a member of the London Natural History Society. I recently contacted someone on Hampstead Heath, Golders Hill Park, and I'm going to share my butterfly and dragonfly records with him over the next year.
Oh, great.
Good.
Wonderful.
So, right, okay.
Maggie and then John.
Four of us.
I'm Maggie Lahan from Chimbrook Community Orchard in Lewisham.
Great, thank you. John White.
Yeah, I'm John from the Friends of Mile End Park. I don't know much about butterflies, so I'm here to learn a little bit. We're trying to increase the sort of the biodiversity in our sort of a little woodland area we're getting going, and it would be quite, so it'd be quite good to get some ideas of different plants we can put in, etc., to help. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Malcolm.
Hi, I'm Malcolm Hull. I'm the chair of the Butterfly Conservation Branch that covers Hertfordshire and London north of the Thames. So I'm a big supporter of the Big City Butterflies project. We as a branch, we work with a lot of parks and landowners and managers trying to encourage good management and habitats for butterflies and provide advice to help get more of them on your land. I'm very pleased to say, saw my first butterfly of the year today, the peacock.
Hooray!
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Claire and then Sarah, please.
Claire, me.
Yes,
sorry.
please.
Yes, hello. I'm the community lead of the Friends of Duncan Terrace and Colbrook Road Gardens, which is in Islington, and we're engaged, like everybody else, in a project around supporting biodiversity, becoming more pollinator friendly, and working with butterfly conservation and other groups.
Great, wonderful, thank you. Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah, working with the Friends of St John's Garden, Southern Islington, also looking to improve biodiversity, really keen to learn more about the part that butterflies play in that.
Great, sounds like we've got very good representation from Islington here today. Richard and then Marcin. Oh, you're on mute, Richard.
Which Richard?
Richard Fox.
Sorry, yes, you've got good representation from Wandsworth Common. I didn't think I'd be able to make the meeting, which is why Richard and Lila are there, but they're our butterfly experts, and as Richard said, they started doing a transect for us. So that's the second transect that's happening on Wandsworth Common, which is great. We're also lucky to have met Ellie as well at Wandsworth Common, and yeah, so I'm just sort of interested to get an update on the project.
Great, thank you. Marcin? There you go. We don't seem to be able to hear you. Okay, maybe we'll come back to you later then. Sorry, I don't think your microphone might be working. Dee and then Jenny. Dee, you're muted.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thanks.
I'm Dee, Friends of Horn Park in the Royal Borough of Greenwich.
Great, thank you. Jenny and then Art.
Hello, I'm Jenny. I'm the chair of the Friends of Holland Park, and we're working very hard at the moment to increase the number and type of butterflies that we've got. And I learned a lot from Steve Bolton when you walked around the park with me, Steve, and told me what we could do better. We're listening.
Wonderful. And then Art, please.
Yep. Hi, I'm the chair of Hampton Heath Friends, which is a small site in Hampton, Borough of Richmond, part of, used to be a part of Hounslow Heath. So we're trying to get some of the biodiversity that's found on Hounslow Heath back into this part of Hampton.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining. And I will hand over to Steve and Ellie now then. Thank you.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, and great to have such a good number of people from all different groups. So I hope you can see my screen okay, and we'll get underway. So I'm the conservation officer on the project, and Ellie's also going to talk as well. She's the engagement officer, and we're going to talk a bit about the Big City Butterflies project. It's a 4-year National Lottery Heritage Fund project working to inspire Londoners to discover butterflies and moths and connect them with nature and their local green spaces. This slide to work. There we go. So historically, butterfly conservation tended to focus more on countryside areas and the rarer species, but we're now recognising the importance of urban green spaces, both for habitat conservation and for really engaging with a wider audience. And as you know, there's some fantastic green spaces kind of all across London, with nature reserves, parks and green spaces. Nearly 47% of London is green. And so there's really lots of fantastic opportunities for us to work and engage with different partners within that area. And there's a bit of an example. You can get these little sort of hotspots, you know, right in central London. So the Barbican Wildlife Garden, as an example, provides a little oasis, you know, in quite a heavy urban area. And by providing some appropriate management and some good habitat, we can really support biodiversity. And a whole host of wildlife, not just butterflies, but lots of pollinators and other wildlife as well. And this, obviously, you can see some wildflower areas, but also a good variety of trees and shrubs that provide different habitats that butterflies and moths need. As an example of that, I suppose this is a common blue. So what we're looking to do is create breeding habitats that really support breeding populations right through the life cycle. So it's thinking about that life cycle right through the year. And often we talk about feeding, so the nectar sources from the wildflowers, the breeding habitat, so that's thinking about the caterpillar food plants that the butterflies need. And then also the shelter, which can be long grass or shrubs to provide that shelter kind of through the winter, and thinking about overwintering habitat. So it's thinking about kind of all those elements to help support butterflies and particularly breeding butterflies. And unfortunately, the picture overall is not great at the moment. With a recent updated report on the state of British butterflies, showing that 80% of all butterfly species are in decline over the last 40 years. And that's not only the kind of rarer species, it's also the wider countryside species. So some of those shown on the screen, these are all wider countryside species, which includes the sort of, you know, butterflies that you might think of as relatively common, like the large white in the bottom right-hand corner there, has declined by 30% over the last 40 or so years. And the small tortoiseshell, again, quite a common one that people might see in their gardens, again, has declined quite significantly. Mm. So we really need all our green spaces, including in these urban areas, to work harder in terms of supporting the recovery, you know, to sort of try and reverse the decline of the butterfly species that we're seeing, and of moths. I think it's roughly about 2/3 of all larger moths are in decline as well. So it's with that kind of backdrop in mind that the Big City Butterflies project was established, and we've got another couple of years to go on the project, and we've done some really great work. But just to give you a bit of a feel for some of our long-term objectives. So firstly, to help Londoners discover and connect with butterflies and moths and the green spaces that support them. So it's really working with a wide variety of groups, councils, community groups and individuals across the project area to kind of inspire them to get involved with butterfly conservation. My role as conservation officer is very much on this objective to improve the quality and connectivity of green spaces to increase their suitability for butterflies, moths and other wildlife. And I'll come on to some of the different activities we do to try and deliver some of these objectives in a minute. Another big part of the project is to increase levels of recording and monitoring across London. And that's really going to help us better understand how butterflies are faring in the capital and in these urban green spaces. I know quite a few of you have mentioned butterfly transects, which is brilliant to be getting involved and helping us get that data that we need. And we're looking to increase opportunities for butterfly conservation to engage with new audiences. So yeah, particularly in these urban areas, we can target some of those urban areas where traditionally we don't have much membership from, in the more deprived areas, the more urban areas, and the more areas that don't have such good access to green space. And we also want to be able to develop and test new approaches to conservation in an urban context, to be kind of experimenting a little bit with different methods and different conservation techniques, and monitor their success. So the project area is focused primarily on inner London, and covers these 17 boroughs, as I say, working with a variety of different partners, both councils and groups across the project area. But it's also very much in partnership with our volunteer-run branches. So that's the colour coding with the northwest covered by the Herts and Middlesex branch, and Malcolm has sort of joined the call today. So if you do fall perhaps outside that core project area, then there is scope to be involved and get some advice on butterfly conservation potentially from our volunteer-run branches, and you can see the different branches there. So there's Surrey and Southwest London in the southwest, and Kent covers the southeast, and Cambridgeshire and Essex covers the northeast. Yes, but the focus of the Big City Butterflies project activities is within those 17 boroughs that you can see highlighted. So we've got three main themes in the project. So I'm going to talk a bit about recording and monitoring and habitat management, and then Ellie's going to give a bit of an update on where we've got to on engagement. So a big part of my role is doing training workshops. So we do butterfly identification and recording workshops, and that's normally a presentation, which can be online to reach the sort of maximum number of people, or it can be in person. And we normally, we always back that up with a guided walk on a site to put it into practice and help with the identification skills. So obviously in the presentation, we go over some of the butterflies that you're likely to see in London, and some ID tips and how to differentiate between some of the similar species, and the sort of times a year to look at for a particular species. And we cover some of there's quite a few different recording schemes which can be kind of tailored to a site or to the kind of available volunteer time that you might have to dedicate to doing some recording and monitoring. So just as a bit of an example, these are just some photos from some of the different workshops we've done across the project area, across London, and hopefully inspiring people to learn more about butterflies and moths, including some children there. And this is a clouded yellow, a migratory species that turned up in Burgess Park that not many people had seen before, so that was quite a nice one to spot. And then as an example on Gladstone Park in Brent, on a walk there, we recorded a new species for that particular site, the small heath that you can see there, which was a new record for the site, and an indication that the management there is going well and going in the right direction. And obviously, yeah, one of the outcomes of those training workshops is to try and establish new butterfly conservation recording and monitoring schemes. So we've got 17 sites there that we've helped set up so far. And I mentioned the Gladstone Park example, and that particular one is a new butterfly transit that we set up. And that's the method where you walk along a fixed route that you can see on the map there, that's broken up into sections, and you record the butterflies that you see as you walk along on a weekly basis between April and September, and that can be shared in a small group. And that's the best method for monitoring butterflies, and is particularly valuable when done over a number of years, because you can begin to see the trends and the butterfly numbers change between the years. So a really good, useful tool for us and for the site managers. And there are less time-consuming methods which you can learn about if you join one of our training workshops. And yeah, that's just a picture of some of the I think there's some nice sort of fine grasses and acid grass in there on Gladstone Park, and that's where we recorded the small heath butterfly. So another big part of my role is the habitat management activities, and I do lots of site visits, site advice visits, all across London, and indicated by those different markers. So you can see we're trying to sort of spread across London, but where we do have really good links, and yeah, great to see lots of people from Islington, and that is a borough where we've made some really good links and done quite a bit of site advice and improvement to different sites, and that begins to build up a bit of a network. And it's when you can create that network of different sites that are interconnected that you can really improve and begin to enhance and build the butterfly populations. And so yes, the pink markers on there are sites where we've gone on to support some physical improvements on the different sites, with supply of seed, for example, or plug plants, pot plants, contractors going on to create small butterfly banks, for example, and tree and shrub planting. So I've got a few examples of some of that kind of site advice and some of the different things we've been up to. So at Dulwich Park in southwest London, in Southwark, the park managers there did have some areas of wildflower areas, but they were primarily more annual wildflowers, and therefore didn't support butterflies and moths, as well as a more varied or with a good variety, particularly of meadow wildflowers, which tend to be the perennial wildflowers like oxeye daisy, for example, that return each year. And so if you can establish more of that meadow habitat with perennials, the perennials will return every year and is more sustainable in terms of not needing to reseed, but also supporting more butterflies and other pollinators. So we advise them and we work with them in terms of clearing off some of the vegetation there, and rotivating. Hello? I'll carry on, and rotivating.
If everyone can just mute themselves, if that would be all right, that would be great, thank you.
Yeah, so we rotivated and then worked with the Friends group there to reseed the area with a meadow mix to try and get those perennials established and support more butterflies and moths in that way. And so you can get quite quick turnaround. So it was seeded in the autumn, and then the following year we did have some annuals in the mix to have that bit of colour in the first year. So you can see some cornflowers and poppies there. But there's also quite a bit of wild carrot, which is a perennial, and then over time the perennials will take a bit longer to establish, but we're monitoring this site to kind of record and see how that develops in terms of the perennials getting established, and then hoping to see more of this small copper butterfly that's shown on the screen there, which is one that was a new record for the site quite recently. Another example in Clapham Common, where the Friends group are really keen and had done some of these wildflower strips. This isn't in full summer, so that they don't look quite as good as they probably did in summer. But yeah, the Friends group had done some wildflower strips, but found that because of the rich soil, the kind of ryegrass and the surrounding grasses were just coming in and kind of taking over, and it was a real battle to try and sort of maintain these areas. And they were keen to do something a bit bigger and a bit more ambitious, and actually they had some funding to sort of help do that. And we came up with a design to kind of enhance this area. You can see in the top left the kind of before picture, if you like, which was, it was an area left for longer grass, but it was all fairly boring ryegrass with very little biodiversity, very few wildflowers. And the design or the plan was to scrape back that nutrient-rich topsoil to expose the subsoil, which is much better for supporting the wildflowers. And you can see that the sort of the landscaping work that was done and the subsoil is exposed. The topsoil was retained on site and made into a shelter bank kind of around the edge. which is a kind of south-facing crescent, which helps with different microclimate conditions and warm shelter areas for the butterflies. It was then seeded. Yeah, this was only last year in spring 2022, and yeah, we had this there was a bit of a slow start, but once you get the right conditions, we had this great flush of mainly annual wildflowers again this year, and they take advantage of that sort of first year to flower and bloom. But now we've been back in the autumn, we can see lots of perennials starting to develop. Like the oxeye daisy again, birdsfoot trefoil, which is a really good nectar source, and also caterpillar food plant for the common blue butterfly. So it's really going to start developing into a rich habitat. We've also incorporated some shrub. You can't see in that photo, but we're also incorporating some shrub planting, so things like hawthorn, blackthorn, and buckthorn, into little pockets around the banks to provide further shelter. For butterflies and moths, and will also benefit other wildlife as well. So another aspect that we can support is more kind of horticultural planting. So yeah, many parks, green spaces may have more formal flower beds, and there's some great nectar, particularly the nectar plants that can support butterflies and moths. So for example, there, I think it was verbena, which some of you may be familiar with, and quite a common one that is planted in gardens. And also the perennial wallflower is another good one, which provides nectar through a long period of the spring and summer. And yeah, we can obviously come out and sort of advise on some appropriate planting where necessary. Then so in addition to some of the sort of flowers and wildflowers, we also provide tree and shrub planting, a really valuable part of the habitat, and particularly one that's actually sometimes missing, particularly when thinking of grassland areas. Scrub is actually an important component of grassland habitat and helps provide that shelter for butterflies and moths through the year. So really useful to put in small blocks of scrub, for example, or shrubs into grassland areas, which is something that isn't readily done. They are doing it on Clapham Common, for example, and here at Avery Hill Park, which is a site in Greenwich actually, where there's a really active Friends group in there. In one area there, looking to create new woodland and doing lots of woodland planting, and also these small blocks of shrub and scrub planting. And also we supplied them with disease-resistant elm, which is helping to replace some of the elm lost through Dutch elm disease, and supports the rare white letter hairstreak butterfly. And yeah, we also do habitat management training workshops, and that can be to community groups or council and parks teams. We've done quite a few of those across the project area. It's normally a presentation and then out on the site to have a look at different opportunities to improve and enhance habitat management. And yeah, as a result, we're looking to advise on the longer term management plans and maintenance plans to provide some enhancements, and then how to manage them in the longer term as well. And yes, that is it from me in terms of my role. If I'll hand over to Ellie now, who's going to talk to you a bit about engagement.
Thanks, Steve. So nice to see you all. And as Steve mentioned earlier, I'm the engagement officer on the project. So my role is basically focusing on passing on our knowledge and passion to everyone that we can in London, and really trying to take as many people as we can on the journey with us throughout the 4 years. So I focus on school workshops, community events, and high footfall public events, and I'll go through those each individually. But just to show a similar map to Steve, this is the spread of engagement so far across London. So starting off with school workshops, so far we've done 51 school workshops and around about 1,000 children engaged. So been really busy over the 2 years, and we've actually got quite a long waiting list, which is really good. So lots of people really interested in learning more about butterflies and moths. And it's really, really important in such an urban area to enable children to have some access to green spaces and learn more as well. So the first workshop that I do with the children is all about butterflies and moths, and an introduction, sort of showing them how amazing they are, and really getting them excited about nature and accessing their green spaces as well. So at the end of the workshop, we always do a planting activity in their school grounds. And this is to get them to learn more, but also to build up that connectivity between the sites as well. So we're really thinking about which schools we're working with and linking them to the sites that Steve's doing work with as well. So far we've had 11 schools that we've worked with, and we've planted up 6 of their green spaces within the schools. And then I go back in the summer. So the first workshop's normally in spring or autumn. And then the second workshop's going back to further that knowledge and, get them even more excited and learn more. So we talk about the life cycle and different adaptations that butterflies and moths have. And it's just to increase that knowledge and sort of leave them with something to think about as well. And this one's really exciting because we bring in live specimens, so you can see some pictures here. So we try and show them what's in the green spaces around them. So often we do a moth trap before and bring those in as well. So sort of bringing the nature to them. So the second part of my role, so as well as the school workshops, I also do community events. So this is a range of different events to lots of different groups. So it could be a youth group like we have on the top right hand side, or it could be a different group. So I've done activities with hospital staff, community action projects in the local area as well. So yeah, just lots and lots of different people. And really the sort of aim of these is to just engage a wider audience as we can. So we're really looking to work with groups that may not have experienced much of nature before, and sort of, really try and bring them along the project with us. So so far we've delivered 37 community events and around about 950 people engaged, so quite a big number again. And those are a real range of activities. So we do the traditional butterfly and moth walks and talks, which some groups are interested in, but also sort of branching out from them and thinking about different activities that might appeal to other people. So things like using arts and photography to inspire people and using that as a hook, doing lots of beginners identification courses as well. So linking to Steve's the things that Steve mentioned earlier, we can also do some beginners identification and think about other schemes that people might want to do. So things like the big butterfly count or the garden butterfly survey as well. So there's a few there's a few different pictures on here from some different activities I've done, but the one on the left hand side was a big sort of arts project that we did with a local green space. And that was led in collaboration with a local artist in London. So I thought I'd give an example here of quite a different event to those that I mentioned. So this one is community planting. So these are actually pictures of events that Steve's been involved in as well. So he's led a lot of community planting events this year, which is a really good way to engage people, but also bringing that habitat management aspect as well. So we've got some elm tree planting at the top and some community planting of plug plants in Redbridge as well. So we're trying to work on a lot more events like that to sort of bring different aspects of the project together. And then on the left hand side there, we've got an example again of a different type of workshop. So this one is focused on family planting. So planting up things like caterpillar food plants and nectar sources, and the families there were able to take them home to sort of build that connectivity again and get people thinking about how they can help butterflies and moths. So there's a picture of this 2 slides ago, but this is another example of a community event. So this one was slightly bigger. And this one focused on a particular green space rather than a particular group. So it was a really open event, and we based it in Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park. So yeah, a really built up area, but with a large population. So we worked with another artist here, so you can see Lena in the bottom right hand side. And this event was focused around Lena's artwork. So she's inspired by moths and showing people how amazing moths are, and also highlighting the threats to them as well. And her work focuses specifically on the effects of light pollution. So you can see her installation here, but this was on in the night time. So during the day we had lots of different arts activities, walks and talks, and we had a moth trap as well, and that was open to everyone. And then in the evening we had her installation out, and lots of people sort of came through the park and were able to engage with nature in a different way. So might not be able to see it this well in the picture, but it's a big light installation. There's people lying underneath it and listening to spoken word poetry. So yeah, it's all about thinking of different ways to connect people with butterflies and moths, and sort of not just the normal butterfly walks and talks, but lots of other things as well. So as well as the school workshops and community events, we also attend bigger events like festivals and shows and country fairs as well. So far we've attended 9 of these big events, and again, it's a bit of an estimate, but around about 5,000 people engaged. So these are really sort of hitting a really high number of people in one go. And we do lots of things during these. We speak about the project and about butterfly conservation, but we also promote different campaigns and schemes as well, and share our knowledge and advice on different areas. So one of the things that we do during these events, as they're often in the summer, is promoting the big butterfly count. So you can see the sort of left-hand side picture there, that we've got sort of a lot of equipment to get the word out about that. Oh, we might have to go back a sec, Steve, sorry. But the big butterfly count is our really big citizen science campaign, and it gives us a really good indicator of how butterflies and moths are doing, but it's really accessible. And yeah, we promoted that really widely last year, and it's really good for families. So that's one of the things we do in the big events. And we also share our knowledge and advice. So lots of people come up to our stalls and ask about how they can help butterflies and moths. So talking about gardening, talking about counting, and other ways they can help them as well. And we often have some activities to get people engaged as well. So there's a couple of different examples here. So on the left-hand side, we attended Lambeth Country Show last year, which is in Brockwell Park, and spoke to a few hundred people there. And then on the right-hand side, it's a bit of a different event, but we've also done some quite high footfall virtual events as well. So this one on the right-hand side was actually in the first year of the project, when there were still lots of things not open because of COVID. So it was a different way of getting people engaged. But we did lots of short talks about about moths and bats. So we did this in collaboration with Bat Conservation Trust, and that was a really different and exciting evening as well. And then the final thing with this sort of part of the campaign, so the inspiring people and passing on our knowledge, is supporting on campaigns as well. So through the Big City Butterflies project, we were supporting Wild Spaces, which is one of the Butterfly Conservation's strategic goals. So it's a bit of a big mission, but the mission is to create 100,000 wild spaces by 2026, and that will help improve the state of butterflies and moths in the UK. So this is a really important campaign and something that everyone can really get involved with. And the definition of a wild space is one where butterflies and moths can complete their life cycles. And that area just needs to enable them to feed, breed and shelter. So feed is making sure that you've got nectar sources for the adults, so the adult butterflies and moths. Breed is making sure that you've got caterpillar food plants for the caterpillars to eat. And then shelter is having things like long grass or log piles, or plants like ivy and climbers to make sure that they've got shelter in bad weather, and also for different stages of the life cycle as they overwinter. And there's no defined size for a wild space, as long as those requirements I just mentioned are met. And there's a few different examples there on the left-hand side. So it could be a patio or a balcony with pots on it. It could be a private garden, or it could be a community green space. So the list really is endless as long as those requirements are met. But at the moment, we're really looking for people to register their wild spaces. So there's going to be lots and lots of spaces that already have those requirements. So it'd be amazing to get those registered. But also you can pledge to create a wild space as well. So if you're interested in doing that, and you want to do some work to sort of make it a better space for butterflies and moths, it's a really good way of helping. And with both of those things, you'll get regular updates as well. So yeah, just to mention another way that people might be able to help and share the word as well. And there's a link at the bottom that will take you to that page. Cool. Well, I think that's it. So definitely time for questions, I think. But there's all of our details on here as well. So do get in touch by email if there's anything specific you want to ask us. And we've also got the project website there where you can sign up to our e-newsletter. And that's a monthly newsletter, and we talk about what we're up to each month, and also list our different events and training that you might want to get involved in. So Steve mentioned earlier about the identification and monitoring training that he often runs, so keep an eye out on there.
Great, thank you, Ellen. And just to mention, we can share these slides, so we'll send a PDF sort of copy to Laura to sort of distribute if that's useful, so you can obviously get these details and the links and that sort of thing through that means as well.
Yes, I can maybe post it on the website. Would that be okay to put a link to the presentation on the website? Great, I'll do that.
Oops. Oh, hang on. Stop share. Right, there we go.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Steve or Ellie? I'll kick things off. I've got a question. So, I mean, many of us manage, are part of friends groups or do some sort of community volunteering with green and blue spaces. So, can we ask someone from Butterfly Conservation to come by and sort of do like a space audit to see how we can, better create space to feed, breed, and shelter? Is that something that you would do?
Yes, so I can provide site advice visits focused on that project area that I said. So we can give a list of the kind of boroughs that are included in the project area, and for sites that are outside that area, we'd probably put people in touch with the branch network that I mentioned.
Yeah, great, thank you. Let's see, Richard and then Roger, please. So Richard Fox.
Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from Ellie and Steve what the future holds. What the final years of the program is intended to do. I mean, will it be more of the same, or is there a sort of a final leg to it?
It's more of the same. But at the same time, building on what we've done in terms of that strategic overview of where we've been working to make sure we're filling in the gaps, if you like, and trying to create that network. So thinking about how that connectivity across the project area, and also building on some of the knowledge that we developed in terms of learning and trying different methods and different techniques and producing some final project resources, if you like, particularly in terms of habitat management, to develop kind of how-to guides, if you like, which can be shared more widely, and also focusing on those harder to reach areas and some of the work that Ellie's doing in terms of targeting new audiences, I would think.
I think as well, just to add to that, we're working really hard on our volunteer offer and trying to sort of get a network of volunteers that we can link with the different branches that Steve showed in the map across London. So trying to think about the legacy and how we can keep all of the parts of the project going as well after it's finished. So the next 2 years should give us a good amount of time to really think about that and how we can carry it on as well.
Thanks.
Great. Roger Chapman.
Yeah, thanks very much. Excellent presentation. Really enjoyed it. I was wondering, can you give us some ideas for sort of some caterpillar feeding plants, I suppose, that can be used and planted now, ready for the sort of coming spring and summer?
Well, there's a whole variety really, but things like holly and ivy are really good for the widespread holly blue butterfly in terms of shrubs. Buckthorn is another really good one in an open sunny spot for brimstone butterfly. Then in terms of more your sort of meadow habitat, if there are some meadow areas that can be established, I mentioned the bird's foot trefoil, which is a really good plant that's both good for nectar and as a caterpillar food plant for the common blue. Having wilder areas with nettles, for example, there's quite a few different butterflies. The red admiral, small tortoiseshell peacock. Ideally, you need quite a large patch of nettle in sort of open areas, and that's a really good one that supports lots of different species. So yeah, there's quite a variety, and the picture of the small copper that I had up earlier, that feeds on common sorrel, which is often does well in some of the grassland areas, particularly I saw some the other day in some adjacent to some acid grassland. So yeah, there's really quite a variety of plants that can be established to support butterflies.
I've just popped a couple of links from our website in the chat. So we've got a list for butterfly food plants and then some moth food plants as well. So that might be helpful to start with, and a link to our sort of gardening section, just to add to what Steve mentioned.
And there were a couple of questions in the chat before I get to Malcolm and Suzanne. So someone asked about tips for shady woodland.
Well,
okay. Well, yes, there are shade tolerant sort of plants. For example, garlic mustard is one that's a good one that supports orange tip and green veined white as a caterpillar food plant. So yeah, there's again a variety of shade tolerant plants. Selfield is another one, and also thinking about spring flowers that will flower, before the trees are in full leaf. So things like primrose, forget-me-not is another one. So again, we can. These are the kind of lists that we do have available on our website, but we'd be looking to produce those resources, and actually really useful to kind of understand, from you guys, and the kind of advice that you need, so we can produce the right kind of resources that summarize what you want really.
Thanks. And then just the second question from the chat was around drought resistant plants. So I don't know if the resources that Esarine posted highlight that, but I think a lot of friends groups here are quite concerned about planting drought resistant things, since obviously the summers have gotten so hot and dry.
We found actually the verbena that I mentioned earlier, for more the sort of formal areas. Actually, we found that that's worked really well and has sort of survived this summer just gone better than the wallflowers, which we also supplied. And I think that was I think it was Wandsworth Park. I know we've got a few Wandsworth Park people on the call. But then also thinking about your kind of Mediterranean herbs, if you like, that are obviously suited to those kind of drier conditions. So marjoram is a really good one, quite a sort of tough, almost shrub-like plant, or some gardens might know it as oregano. Lavender, of course. So it's those type of the hardier shrubs that can tolerate drought. Actually, the bird's foot trefoil is another good one. can be quite low growing and it's quite deep rooted. So where often in some wildflower verges, for example, you might see a lot of dead grass around in a drought. Actually, the bird's foot trefoil is able to survive that drought because it's got such deep roots. So yeah, I'd recommend some of those, I think.
Great, thank you. Malcolm, you had a question.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Ellie was saying. There's in London Butterfly Conservation, we've got 4 branches, so it's not always immediately obvious which branch you're in. But the best way to keep in touch is really through, because we have a membership scheme that if you join Butterfly Conservation, you join the National Society, and then you get allocated to your local branch. And I mean, in our branch north of the river, we have several newsletters each year, which has got absolutely loads of information about butterflies, and we organise a whole load of public walks that are usually free and available to members to come out and really familiarise yourself with the different species. I mean, some butterflies you might find in any park, but there's quite a lot, for example, that you would only see in 1 or 2 places, and we organise guided walks that someone that's experienced can sort of show you where the spots are and teach you to learn how to identify different butterflies. So it's the best way is to sort of look on our websites, and if you join, then you'll get like regular communications that will sort of keep in touch with what's going on. And just to add to the drought-resistant plants, I wouldn't be complete without mentioning Buddleia, which is number 1 butterfly plant a lot of the time, and that's because it holds its nectar longer than pretty much any other plant that there is. It's used to growing out of mountainsides and the sides of buildings and places like that, so it has able to produce nectar when everything else has dried up. So great one to have in your park.
Great, thank you, Malcolm. Yes, good points there. Suzanne, you had a question.
It's kind of directed at Nigel for the Brent area. We've got a new council estate being formulated at the moment with a biodiversity net gain. It would be great to have some interaction with you there for hopefully forming a new friends group there. And we've got a Welsh Harp triple SI reservoir that we just had a meeting for, with a saving and education centre there, and looking at plugging into your education programmes as well, with Thames 21, who are backing away in the communities, getting involved in different groups. So there's quite a lot going on in Brent, that's just to name 2. But it would be great to have definitely, I think I've joined as Brent Parks Forum, but we need to get lots of people signed up, and it'd be great to get more things going on in these areas.
Great, thank you, Suzanne. Simon, you've got your hand up. Simon Braidman.
Yeah, just a brief one about the disease-resistant elm, because I looked into this and they seem to be extraordinarily expensive. Were they provided free as part of the project?
Yes, so we've got a budget for planting. So yes, we can supply them free of charge. But actually, we can put a link in the description or share a link. There's a new butterfly conservation website actually, which discusses some of the different cultivars, the different varieties and different suppliers on there. And actually, if you go to some of the smaller suppliers and that have smaller trees, they can be as little as £20 per tree, or a sort of large width, rather than the bigger standard trees that you might have for street planting. So I'll see if I can share that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Link.
Great, thank you. And Art?
Yeah, hi. Couple of questions. First one, from your question about elms. Does White Leatherhair Streak have a particular issue with the size of the elms, or do diseased elms, i.e. ones which get so far and then keel over, do they still provide the necessary feed? And the second question is relating to grassland management and the best times and heights and so on to reduce the amount of grass that you've got in order to keep it low nutrient?
So yeah, with the elms, they do need to reach maturity enough to flower, because it's partly the flowers, but then also the leaves that the caterpillars feed on, and so they don't have that long once they get to that kind of age before they do succumb to the disease. So that's why it's important to provide the disease-resistant elms so that they do reach full maturity and then obviously continue to live healthily for many years, flowering. And actually often it's better to coppice the diseased trees before they get too big and become fully diseased. So coppicing them at about 10 or 12 years to prevent the spread of the disease.
Yeah, and we've got a lot of elms which are regenerating constantly from the base, but whether they ever flower is another question. But that's interesting that they need to flower.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Need to get to that age. Yeah. And I've just shared that link there, so that is quite a really useful website with more information there. So click on that if you want more information on the elms.
Sure.
And then the other part was around the timing of cutting. Was that right?
Yeah, timing and height and so on. You know, do we get grassland species, caterpillars and eggs, vulnerability to damage while being cut, that sort of thing?
It can depend on sort of what you're trying to achieve on the site and what sort of state your grassland is in, because sometimes if you don't have many wildflowers, you might be better off doing a more intensive kind of almost restoration cutting where you cut and collect, importantly, maybe 2 or 3 times in the season, you know, during the growing season, to reduce nutrients and encourage more wildflowers. But once you've sort of established you know, the best sort of wildflower habitat you can, then you normally would avoid cutting between April and August, and that will allow the majority of butterflies that use that habitat to complete their life cycle. So, for example, the meadow brown caterpillar will go down into the base of the grass or into the soil, and that will allow you to complete an autumn cut. So from September, you can do that cut, and yes, you're right, you don't want to cut too close to the ground and disturb that kind of the base of the grasses, and that will allow the meadow brown caterpillar to complete its life cycle over the winter undisturbed. But at the same time, if you can, and again it kind of depends a bit on what species you have in the area, it's always good to leave some areas of long grass uncut over winter that are left long, because other species will overwinter in the dead stems of grass, for example. So having some left uncut over winter can be important as well.
So basically, a bit of everything.
Yeah. Mix it up, a bit of a mosaic. So often we talk about a kind of rotational management where, for example, you would divide your grassland up into 3 areas and cut 2/3 each year and leave 1/3 uncut each year, and that third changes each year.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Malcolm, you've got your hand up.
Oh yeah, Steve. I was just going to mention the brown hair streak, because this is one butterfly which probably was hardly in London at all 10 years ago, but has now started spreading quite rapidly up through southwest London and into West London. And it's a species that people may not be very familiar with, because nationally it is still quite rare and endangered. And London, it's never really been here before the last 10 years, but it is now getting quite widespread and you know, even fairly well into London. Whether you could just say a little bit to people about what the habitat requirements are for that species, so they don't inadvertently do the wrong thing, because it's slightly different to some of the other butterflies we've got.
Yeah, so the brown hair streaks caterpillar food plant is blackthorn shrub, which is, you know, reasonably common in some of the bigger parks, and particularly, you know, like some of the clay soils, and the brown hair streak is spreading up from the kind of the Surrey kind of Weald area in particular. That was its kind of stronghold. So where you've got blackthorn on a site, yeah, it's a useful one to be aware of, particularly as it likes to lay eggs on the kind of younger blackthorn shrubs, kind of on the edges of blackthorn scrub, and in hedges, of course, as well, where you've got blackthorn in hedges. So it's worth checking your sites if you do have blackthorn in hedges or edges, and that's quite valuable habitat, as I say, particularly on the younger blackthorn on the edges, and therefore they overwinter as eggs, and then of course if you're trimming or cutting back hedges and edges, and you do it every year, you're effectively destroying potential habitat for the brown hair streak. Yeah, so it's one that again needs kind of rotational management, or some areas left uncut each year on the blackthorn to make sure you're got some intact habitat where it can lay eggs and complete its life cycle. And they also, the adults are quite elusive, and so often actually one way of checking is to look for the eggs on young blackthorn, which is something that we can help sort of give a few tips on. And then the adults are often seen. You need to look up in mature ash trees. There's one place where the adults congregate, and particularly the males, and then the females will disperse kind of more widely along hedgerows.
That's great. Thank you very much. Does anyone else have any questions?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Richard from Wandsworth Common.
That's it. Yeah, no, it's just a quick question on the subject of grassland management. Whereas we've got quite good, sort of quite well curated grassland there, but there are also some very scarce species that we'd like to encourage, and I'm thinking particularly of small copper and brown argus, which are there in tiny numbers. And maybe partly because there isn't enough of the larval food plants, you know, not enough of the sorrel, not enough of the cranesbill, is it, and
yes,
rock rose. That is needed for them. I mean, can we intervene easily? I mean, can you just sort of walk over a patch of grassland and sprinkle some sorrel seed, or would that be a terrible crime?
No, we do regularly do seeding, because yes, if we want to create better habitat and more habitat, particularly if you've got the plants there already, we know the conditions are sort of favourable. But it's about kind of extending that habitat where possible, and it kind of does depend on the site a little bit. But with things like seeding, you need to make sure you've got the right sort of ground conditions and enough bare ground to make it worthwhile, and also the soil isn't too rich so that it's got space to germinate and develop. Or you can consider things like plug planting, of course, where you can purchase small plants and plant them out in an area where perhaps you might have some of the plants already, assuming that the management is appropriate and there's enough kind of space for them to grow and develop.
Great, thank you. I'm just gonna look through to make sure I've not missed anyone. Does anyone else have any questions?
I think there was one just asking about a recommended handbook or guide.
Okay.
Yeah, we do have some existing resources which we can share. As I say, we are looking to develop new and updated versions which will kind of bring it together. But there is an existing sort of guide which does sort of summarise all the different urban habitats and where you can support, how you can support butterflies. So that is something we can share.
Great, thank you. All right then, if nobody else has any questions, then I think we'll let Steve and Ellie go. Obviously, I just want to say a really big thank you. I think that was really informative and incredibly interesting. And I think we've all learned quite a bit today. So thank you so much for your presentation and for your time answering questions as well. Yeah, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting us,
Diana.
and thanks everybody. And yes, we'll make sure you can share those slides then, and do get in touch if you want to work further.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
See you later.
So,
Cheers.
thank you.
Thank
I'm
you
going to
very
stop
much.
the recording now. Let's see, where did the recording button go? Okay, here we go.